Whenever people think of a Nintendo DS, it's either for the major IPs that made their way there, whether because of new games or remakes of classics. But other times people think of the touchscreen dependent games, ones that show how this technology could be used for gaming. But the DS is so much more than that, and it's home to some of the cultiest of cult hits from modern gaming. Oh, I guess it's not really that modern anymore. Oh. I'm not feeling good. But at least I have Henry Hatsworth in the puzzling adventure to comfort me as I process time's constant march. While the title may not sound like it, this is at times a tough-as-nails platformer, especially for people who want to go for everything. It is unforgiving and cruel, but I can't be mad because it's adorable and so well animated. It's surprising this game came from a studio with such a lackluster pedigree, and you'd perhaps know them as the company behind a bunch of Madden releases. Though at least here, the team behind this were clearly passionate, and their love oozes all over this game in a good way. But I got ahead of myself. This nail-biting platformer will make a lot of its player base angry, but happy enough that they keep on pushing through because they won't let this game beat them. But it isn't just that, it's also a puzzle game. Yeah, the title makes some sense now. While the top screen is always platforming antics, on the bottom we get coloured blocks that rise up, and we can match 3 or more of the same colour to destroy them, and this can, at the best of times, lead to huge combos, as everything falls into place. We can only move 2 blocks at a time by swapping 2 in a horizontal box, or by using that same grid to move a single block on its own, if there's only one in that area. But I don't need to explain this, it's Puzzle League, or Panel de Pon, or Tetris Attack, or whatever else you call it. Though I don't mean literally, this isn't in the same series, it's just borrowing heavily from it. The puzzle gameplay being basically stolen from elsewhere is actually a pro, since it means we don't need to learn a whole puzzle type, and all the creativity and improvements of skill for us, the player, can be focused on the rest of the game. Plus, if this was a super creative puzzle game, there would be a section of the audience annoyed that the platform interrupts what they're really here for. So yes, I'm happy to defend the plagiarism here. Puzzle League is awesome, but if I just want more of that, I've got plenty of other ways to play it. Though the obscene Britishness of this game does bring to mind It's Mr. Pants. Though other than a few superficial similarities, these games are nothing alike. I just like mentioning It's Mr. Pants whenever I get the opportunity to. That being said, some rare charm did slide its way into this game, since characters during dialogue sections have a similar mumble sound to what they would if this was Banjo-Kazooie. On the surface, this looks like a mishmash of disparate design ideas, but once you get used to it, it shows that this is a very focused game that knows exactly what it is. It's just that what it is happens to be unlike anything else. Every mechanic complements the next, and it creates this symbiosis of weird systems that feels effortless. We platform and attack obviously, both fairly standard, though our melee attack can also be done in a standard fashion, a crouching low blow, an upwards attack, or a diving downward stab. And all of these are free to do, though our ranged attacks, which come in gun, bomb, and boomerang flavors based on whichever sub-weapon we currently have equipped, gun by default, all use a little bit of our super meter, which is basically what this game is built around. Ammo is plentiful, since our super meter shouldn't be drained long. It's filled up by playing the puzzle game on the bottom screen. The rows keep rising up and they never stop. It's basically a free super meter charge, though defeated enemies turn into different blocks with faces on them, which we need to prioritize and defeat. Otherwise, if they make it to the top screen, they resurface as a new enemy that homes in on us for a few moments before disappearing. So it's good to keep on touch of both screens and never let the bottom one be forgotten. It helps to switch to the puzzle for a couple seconds whenever a secondary attack is being launched, because you can power them up by knocking out a few blocks mid-shot, And if that isn't devastating enough, these secondary attacks come with a unique special which is important to utilize, because this game is way more focused on combat than you'd expect. Learn these weapons and how to heal yourself, which can either be done by clearing lines of heart pieces contained, or by filling out the super meter once, so Henry can become his younger self with more health. The maximum charge of a super meter also gives us a giant mech suit, by the way. This game is amazing. And that's why you need to do puzzles so you can play as more than just an old man with a cane. It basically means we have a 3-pronged system of power-ups available at any time. Young Henry is what we start each level as, and he regresses to his older self after enough damage is taken to remove his additional hearts. And as mentioned, by completing the puzzle screen, we can get back to our younger self again. But if young Henry fills up the special meter, he gets a super powerful and invulnerable form, this being the mech suit, though this runs on a timer and is never a permanent state. To use a pretty cliche example, it's basically our Tiny Mario, our Super Mario with a mushroom, and Starman Mario. Just in this case we start every level in the Super Mario form. And having these be freely available doesn't break things like it could in other games, because these stages are littered with enemies, and on many occasions you're locked in a room and can't progress until you kill the huge waves of enemies that keep spawning in until the game feels like you've had enough. There will be plenty of downtime where your puzzle board is basically drained, and you're left waiting for it to fill up again, especially during boss fights. And oh god, are they relentless here. They never let up. And these long spectacles have no checkpoints, so it's an old school type of suffering until you've learnt every pattern of them, including their second phases and other switch-ups that they have just to make sure kids never beat this game. Speaking of suffering, you have lives here, and game overs. Thankfully the game saves after every level, so if you do game over, you just have to restart the level with no checkpoints. But much like the boss fights, the levels are quite often on the long side. Difficulty is alleviated somewhat with our store where we can buy many permanent improvements, including more health, more power, higher likelihood of heart blocks appearing, and ways to quicken the super meter and things like that. A new game Henry Hatsworth is nothing compared to the end game one, and there's no shame in replaying levels to grind a little bit of extra money. In fact, it's encouraged with some levels containing hidden portals to rooms where you can rack up the easy money, and secret levels that you would never find on your first playthrough of a level, so you need to go back and rediscover them. And these secret levels allow the already difficult game to get much harder. It's actually really surprising that the game's levels manage to be so complicated, and yet you'd never get lost in them. And each one of these feels completely unique, and not just in aesthetics, but level layout and gimmicks. But I'll start with the aesthetics. I love how the 5 worlds here include way more than just 5 biomes or themes, yet they're all naturally linked together. It feels cohesive even if it is just a linear level select. Mysteria is an adventurous jungle befitting of young Henry's attire, though it later transitions into the scary graveyard on the other side of the continent. Skyland serves as a floating sky island biome, but it also encompasses the fabulous airship theming too. Atlantia is both our water and volcanic lava worlds mixed into one delightful package. But perhaps my favourite is the puzzle realm, which is this weird abstract mess which never wears out its welcome, thanks to the ingenious gimmick inclusion like these platforms that disappear if 3 of the same colour appear. And what might be the most impressive of these, the final world, T-Land, which includes the obligatory sewers, mechanical clockwork interiors, outside on building tops, and a big complicated manner to introduce the endgame. Though I'm glossing over a lot, since even 2 levels of the same theme don't feel the same. I'm just going over the basics of this diverse world. And the art on the level select screen shows this off tremendously. though the secret levels want me wanting in this department, even if mechanically they never do, since they bring in fresh gimmicks or well-written tropes that are still new to Henry Hatsworth. So the ice physics stage is just a single optional secret level here, as are the wind physics stage, or I guess in this case a strong current stage, the auto-scroller stage, and the one dud level in this game, which is like if Sonic 2's Sky Chase was even less involved. Though back onto the levels as a whole, I just want to specify a few things, like that the sewers are actually really fun here and not a hindrance, and these are probably the most colourful and fun sewers I've ever seen in a video game. And the water levels are the low gravity kind and not the awkward swimming kind, so the game doesn't change here for the worse. It's still the same loop, just with a refreshing feel. Oh, I guess I need to pad out this video, so let's get into the plot of this colourful platformer. The Gentleman's Suit is a legendary set of apparel, made up of lots of smaller pieces, and Henry is on a quest to uncover these, and become the best dressed person alive. However, after uncovering the first piece, which is a hat, reality starts to change, thanks to the puzzle realm and Henry's world bleeding together. From a gameplay perspective, this means we have all those monsters here, and the bottom screen turns into the puzzle mode. So our quest becomes to collect all the pieces of a suit to put an end to this, and be rich and well dressed while doing so. However, there are others out there who also want this suit, most notably the main antagonist, Weaselby. He shows up on a lot of occasions just to put an end to our old hero's quest, as do some other bosses who are less weaselly than Weaselby. Each piece of a suit gives us a new gameplay mechanic or a bonus. Most importantly are the main ones that give us things like the ability to cling to and jump between walls, do a dash move, or let us enter water. But the secret optional levels also lead to small bonuses like having a minor increase to the amount of money we receive each level. It's nice to see how much a decked out Hatsworth can make short work out of platforming here. But thanks to the universes interlinking together, this is also handled by the puzzle realm itself. Sometimes we see outlines of platforms that don't actually exist, but after clearing a few blocks in a puzzle screen, blocks suddenly appear there. It can be for alternate routes, or sometimes it's for safety nets to prevent falling into a pit, or it could be a regular intended part of a level design that you just need to use to progress. But my favourite use of these is to make a wall that can prevent things like lava or enemies getting near our protagonist. And it's this kind of creativity, how a simple, small mechanic here can be used for so much, that really shows the talent on display here. Though this isn't just limited to level designers, as I alluded to at the beginning, the art here is phenomenal. Everything is detailed and vibrant, from the menus to the backgrounds to all the sprites on screen, and those sprites animate wonderfully, with lots of frames and some smearing to really sell the cartoon world we're inhabiting. But to compete with the visuals, we have the soundtrack here, and every single song in this game is a jam. Every single one. They're whimsical and silly when they need to be, but they ramp up the intensity when the game isn't messing around. And the sound design as a whole is also great. The enemies let out cute noises timed with deliberate animation to let you know an attack is coming, or how they're dying horribly. If you can see and hear everything on the screen well, then you should never be surprised when an enemy is about to attack. But the difficulty is never about responding to that, it's the overwhelming number of them you have to worry about at once. But one thing that might catch you off guard is the blocks themselves, because there is a problem with them. Thankfully, ordinary blocks all have patterns on them to distinguish them, even beyond the colours. However, all the extra variants we have here, like power-up blocks or enemy blocks, get a new design sans the patterns. It's just faces or lightning bolts or whatever else on here, with the only signifier of it being a different colour being, well, its different colour. For me personally, this was never an issue, but I asked multiple friends and other peers who are colourblind and most of them said something along the lines of, they can make out the differences if they focus on it, but some colours blend together or don't look different enough. Thankfully, for the most part, the blocks at this game do move at a slow enough speed that this won't send you into a panic, but it is still a shame there's an issue here to begin with. This game should have been a little more accessible to the colourblind, perhaps even with just some options to toggle how the blocks actually look. So when it comes to accessibility, Henry Hatsworth stumbles, whereas Mr. Pants will never. And this accessibility I could see being a serious issue during moments where enemies, and especially bosses, mess with the bottom screen. They do all sorts of things like pull up an anchor to drag up the bottom screen more quickly, or make certain blocks completely unusable. These bosses really do like to mess with both screens to make our lives hell. And on the topic of challenge, once the game is beaten, and you see the credits with cute pixel art representations of some staff, you're given the option to play Gentleman's Mode. This is New Game Plus. Though it's not an easy replay, this is the already difficult game's hard mode, not for the faint of heart. Thankfully, your bought items and suit pieces all carry over, so you're starting at max health and with all your fancy movement options. But enemies are harder and the puzzle timer is way shorter, meaning it'll be a real challenge to keep the bottom screen from overflowing and spilling into our main one. It is fantastic that this option is here, as like any other difficult platformer, it gets easier the more you replay it, both with your actual skill improvements, but also the upgrades unlocked over the course of the game. Moments that I game overed on became more of a breeze as I replayed, so it's good that this hard mode is here to put me back in my place. Henry Hatsworth is the surprising hit of a Nintendo DS. It's like an old school platformer smothered in delightful gimmicks and given some of the best possible art it could have. And yet somehow this is an EA game by one of their studios people have very little knowledge of. If you're a fan of this genre, this is a game you should never pass up, but just make sure you're prepared for what the game asks of you, because despite its name and appearance, this game won't go easy on you. And to go from one Henry to another, next video will be on the PSP tactical RPG Jeanne d'Arc, a loose retelling of Joan of Arc's quest to save France from the British rule of Henry VI. But this time, the British have demons, and the French have magical transformations, and a crew that in addition to humans, also includes animal people like this dog guy. I love him.